Now, there's no question, at least from man's point of view, that some life forms are more important than others. We could perhaps survive without certain flowers or trees or wildlife. We may, in fact, someday have to. But I'm optimistic that drastic decisions will never have to be made. I hope at the time this film ends, you'll be optimistic too. Because this is a story about a group of people who have been concerned about living resources of this planet for over 35 years. More importantly, they've been doing something about it.
It was 1936, 7 years after the Wall Street crash that would send the world into the midst of a Great Depression. It was also 7 years after the beginning of a devastating drought, yet to relinquish its grip on the breeding grounds of ducks all across the prairie pothole region. The ducks were suffering their own depression, and many hunters believed that they were about to see the end of waterfowling.
Duck hunters all over the United States were putting their fowling pieces in mothballs. Many refused to buy even a federal duck stamp or a license, let alone a box of shells. It just isn't worthwhile to go duck hunting these days, having to get up early in the morning or sit out in hard weather for a shot or two all day. I wouldn't want my son to pursue a sport that I love so well, that has sunk to such a low level after the way I have known it.
The season that year was a mere 30 days, and many hunters fully expected the 1937 season to be closed completely. It was the dual disasters of drought and drainage that had wrought the duck depression. And it was the dual disasters of drought and drainage that gave birth to Ducks Unlimited, an idea whose time had come, and an organization whose principles and passion are still as evident today as they were in the beginning. This is their story.
Even before the worst of the drought, we knew we were in a duck depression. I visited my favorite fowling waters, and I found nothing but empty skies. All that was left of the great flights were my memories. I knew then that we had to do something, and do it soon.
The banks of a trout stream may seem like a strange place for the birth of an organization devoted to waterfowl, but that is where Ducks Unlimited was born. At the lodge were John C. Huntington, son of a St. Louis attorney, who as early as 1912 had begun promoting restoration of game birds. Arthur M. Bartley, a man who liked to get his hands dirty and his feet wet. Ray E. Benson, an experienced shotgunner who would later edit the first Ducks Unlimited magazine. And at the head of the table was Joseph Palmer Knapp. They had already formed and funded an organization which had laid out a 10-year plan of action for increasing the number of upland game birds. But now they were about to do something incredibly bold, something that had never been done before: create an organization that would manage habitat on a massive scale to impact species that spanned an entire continent. What started at that club with those men on that day would remain the key elements that define DU to this day: volunteerism, partnerships, science-based decision-making, and a sound business model.
It is not what man does, but what he does not do for migratory waterfowl, which is chiefly responsible for diminishing numbers. What is urgently needed is a program which will take no account of international boundaries, but will bring neighbor nations of the North American continent into harmonious accord for the good of the game. Most hunters spend countless hours and dollars on ways to bring more ducks to their blind, but we were talking about a need to manage waterfowl over the entire continent. And it had become clear that Mother Nature needed a helping hand.
Faced with the prospect of shortened or closed duck seasons, Knapp and the others had decided that immediate action was required. But first, they would have to gain a fuller understanding of the causes of the duck decline. To do so, they undertook what has been called the granddaddy of all wildlife surveys, the 1935 International Wild Duck Census. The survey area was to cover over 750,000 square miles in Canada and an additional 230,000 square miles in the United States, in an area that is sparsely settled and poorly eroded. When the survey was completed, more game birds issued their findings. They reported that in the area surveyed, they believed there were 42.7 million ducks, with an estimated 65 million birds for the entire continent. This survey became the template for how seasons and bag limits are established even today. But most important, the census also dramatically reinforced what the founders of DU had suspected all along. The focus of North American waterfowlers must begin in the prairies of Canada.
You know, the first pioneers wrote the folks back home that out here the flocks of ducks and geese were so big that, oh, they darkened the sun. And maybe they were, for a while. But you know, soon North America started filling up with people. And in the first part of this century, they started moving west into the Canadian prairies. Well, for a while, nobody paid too much attention to this situation until the 30s. And then a survey was made, and it proved that the ducks were declining. Yes, they were declining very rapidly indeed. And the reason was that the breeding marshes in Canada were drying up. Well, of course, periodic drought was partly responsible, but really, more and more land was being drained for agricultural purposes. Well, this worried a lot of folks. Soon these worried folks got together and they organized Ducks Unlimited. And since that time, this international conservation organization has been spending millions, in the prairie provinces and all the way across Canada in sort of a colossal home improvement program for ducks and for geese.
You cannot grow ducks without grass and water. And you cannot do the work of restoring that water without money. Success that first year would be determined in two ways. Ducks Unlimited would have to find the best man they could find in the fledgling field of conservation. And secondly, they would set a lofty goal. In its first year, DU would seek to restore 100,000 acres. The man they decided would be charged with the task of restoring these 100,000 acres was Thomas Maine. Tom Maine was borrowed from the Canadian National Railways, where he was the chief surface water engineer. He was an avid hunter and an avid conservationist. Maine was marked on the outside most notably by his snow-white head of hair and an injured eye that was rumored to have been caused by a falling mallard. The first staff meeting of DU Canada was held in Winnipeg on Wednesday, April 20th, 1938. The group had discovered 3 sites to begin their conservation work: Waterhead Marsh near Kinestino in Saskatchewan, Many Island Lake northeast of Medicine Hat, Alberta, and Big Grass Marsh near Langreth, Manitoba. Big Lake would come to be known as Big Grass Marsh, which in turn would come to be known as Duck Factory Number 1.
The interesting group that has chosen the arresting name of Ducks Unlimited fits into the Western scene as something more than an organization interested in sport. It is interested in maintaining water supplies, of creating and maintaining inland bodies of water where ducks may breed, of attracting more birds, of working with the farmer to create better bodies of moisture. All this is linked up with better agricultural development in Western Canada. In an indirect way, the farmer is as much interested in water for ducks as anyone else.
Ducks Unlimited. What a wonderful name for a group of sportsmen whose object it is to perpetuate our splendid game birds and their natural breeding places. And the good news is, that they are getting busy.
We know that we're winning the battle, Ed, and we know that in order to go on winning it, we must go on fighting and building, protecting this heritage for our children and their children after them. It's up to us.
I know it is, Bob, and I'm proud of the work Ducks Unlimited has done and will continue to do.
At the end of its first year, and really only 8 months of field operations, the founding fathers of Ducks Unlimited knew it had something on its hands. DU had forged solid partnerships with wildlife agencies in the Canadian provinces, with local landowners and farmers, and with hunters across North America. Wells were filling again with water, and the skies were filling again with birds. By the end of 1938, DU would meet its ambitious goal of restoring 100,000 acres of habitat, with a final tally in its very first year of 155,000 acres.
Ducks Unlimited's job is dedicated to the cause of waterfowl, to the task of replenishing the supply of ducks and geese on the North American continent. This Ducks Unlimited has been able to do through the contributions of sportsmen and others in the United States and Canada, and the support of the Dominion and provincial governments and the farmers of the prairie provinces. Without this truly splendid example of international cooperation between the sportsmen of two nations, the success of Ducks Unlimited may never have been attained. Exactly what has Ducks Unlimited done? Let's take a look at the evidence. The first project, begun in 1938, was the restoration of Big Grass Marsh, today one of the most productive wildlife habitats in Manitoba. Since then, DU has built over 700 dams and water control structures throughout Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. And now the prairies are dotted with more than 500 DU projects giving life to our waterfowl. It's no exaggeration to say that every sportsman on this continent owes a debt of gratitude to all who made this work possible.
If it were not for the conservation activities of men who wish to kill game, little game would be left for others to see.
After fighting wars across Europe and Asia, the country would find itself on the edge of an era. Americans built rocket ships, pioneered computers, rolled thunderously powerful cars off the assembly line, which then raced across the newly completed interstate highway system. And middle-class America enjoyed prosperity and leisure never seen before. For many, this stability meant that money and time could be spent in the field and in the marsh. DU's fundraising efforts in the United States up to that point was largely focused on the wealthy, but it was the stable and prosperous middle class that needed to be reached if DU wanted to continue its work for the ducks. To reach the middle class, DU turned to Dale E. Whitesell. A graduate of Ohio State University, Whitesell had served 14 years with the Ohio Division of Wildlife. He had a stellar reputation in Ohio among those who valued wildlife and was even dreaded by those who did not, for he had been relentless in pursuing those who polluted Ohio's rivers. Whitesell understood that the key to Ducks Unlimited's success has always been, and always will be, the volunteers who give so much of their time and effort to make sure its conservation is funded.
In those days, 65% of our income came from only 6% of our members. The dinner program we started changed all of that. Our big idea, other than starting chapters everywhere we could gather 5 duck hunters together, was to include the membership with the price of the dinner.
The year after Dale Whitesell was hired, DU had its first $1 million year. While no explicit records exist tracing the origins of the modern membership dinner concept, the paper trail does seem to point back to the Badger State. During his tenure, Ducks Unlimited became the premier wetlands and waterfowl conservation organization in the world. Annual income grew from $700,000 to $50 million, and membership soared to almost 600,000.
I had not been chewed out more by any one person than him in my entire life, but also that I've never respected a man more.
But while many other groups are telling us what we can't do, DU has been showing us what we can do for over 35 years, and it's that can-do spirit that I believe in. I feel that this outfit deserves our support. And by support, I mean dollars. So if you got any extra, don't forget, Ducks Unlimited.
The formula had been blessedly simple. Marshal the duck hunters of the United States into a mighty army of concerned conservationists. Have them raise lots of money for the ducks and send the money north to Canada, where engineers would reshape the land so that even in dry years there would be water for the ducks. But then came habitat losses on a massive scale. Chesapeake Bay grew polluted, and there was little food for the canvasbacks that once poured into the bay during both spring and fall migrations. Thousands of miles of canals dug through the vast marshlands along the Louisiana and Texas Gulf Coast allowed salt water to flow into the fragile coastal wetlands, devastating the freshwater plants that held the marsh together. The most important wintering grounds in the Pacific Flyway suffered a similar fate. Drainage, pollution, cultivation, and redirection of water left far less room for ducks. Migration habitat, especially important to waterfowl during the northward journey, was also disappearing. After 46 years of concentrating its efforts strictly in Canada and Mexico, DU was about to go to the U.S.
Ancient ritual playing out in the skies over the Great Plains this week, one that comes along every fall and yet never fails to impress.
The first DU projects in the United States would be delivered in Montana, North Dakota, and South Dakota. Other projects followed swiftly. Regional offices had to be formed, and the first was established in Bismarck, North Dakota in 1984. The Great Plains Regional Office now works in 8 states, from Minnesota and Iowa west through North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Colorado, and Montana. DU's Western Regional Office was opened in 1987. The WRO works across a huge swath of this continent that is as varied as it is large. DU staff based in these offices are actively working to conserve the diverse habitats that support the Pacific Flyway's waterfowl. The Southern Regional Office, located in Richland, Mississippi, was established in 1990 to protect and restore wetlands and other wildlife habitat in the southeastern United States, but especially in the Mississippi alluvial valley and along the Gulf Coast. Lastly, the Great Lakes Atlantic Regional Office, located in Ann Arbor, Michigan, was established in 1998. With DU conservation initiatives underway from the Chesapeake Bay across the Great Lakes to the boreal forests along the Canadian border, the Galeros area of operation is almost as varied as that of the WRO. DU would soon help to restore the habitat in Mexico. And in 1989, DU opened its Governmental Affairs Office in Washington, D.C. to help encourage policies and secure funding for programs that would be required to to achieve the North American Waterfowl Management Plan's goals.
When this organization was founded in the Dust Bowl days, there was just a handful of you committed to preserving and restoring our wetlands. And just about that time, a few hunters got together and formed a little group called Ducks Unlimited. And thank goodness they did.
I wanted to come here today because this is a huge success. You're doing the right thing, and you're doing it in the right way.
But perhaps the volunteers can best explain why this project is so important.
It gives me hope that great visions can become reality if people work together for a good end.
It'll be here for me, for my little brother and sister, for my nephew, for my children, and for all the future generations of this area and of this nation.
Ducks Unlimited has traveled a long way to get here. We began our journey in 1937 and worked our way, marsh by marsh, pothole by pothole, improving and securing some of the best waterfowl habitat in the world.
Of all DU's partners, the Ducks are the most willing. In 2010, keeping with a long tradition of getting the best conservationists in the business, Dale Hall became the CEO of Ducks Unlimited. A year after Hall took the helm, DU completed the largest capital campaign in conservation history, a 7-year and $1.8 billion campaign, Wetlands for Tomorrow. This work, as all of DU's work, spanning 75 years in 3 countries, was delivered with the principles that have endured the rocky road DU has pioneered: a sound business model, science-based decision-making, the diligence of our volunteers, and partners willing to do the work necessary to save wetlands for waterfowl and waterfowlers alike. Ducks Unlimited continues to set the stage for the nation's waterfowl. We have projects and priorities ensuring the life cycle of ducks and geese throughout the continent, and will face new and probably unexpected challenges in the future. But these challenges pale in comparison to those faced daily by the birds that inspire this grand organization. The magnificent migrations across a continent twice a year, the struggle to remain healthy while winging thousands of miles so that when they settle into a wetland, they are fit to reproduce. Ducks do not have it in them to give up, nor does Ducks Unlimited. DU will not give up because those that belong to it and work for it cannot imagine a world, will not allow a world in which autumn skies are not filled with scores of waterfowl. They will not allow a time in which the human soul has no place to recharge with a dawn in the marsh, or by the sound of wings in the growing light, and the whimper of an anxious dog. They will never give up on a world where they can experience the excitement of a youngster's first day in a blind, or the warmth and smell of a plump bird in hand. This is the legacy. This is the life's work. This is the passion, and this is the promise of Ducks Unlimited.
Happy birthday, Ducks Unlimited. I've been with you a long time, and I'm approaching 75 myself, and I wish you a happy 75th anniversary.
I joined Ducks Unlimited in 1970, and I'm proud to wish DU a happy 75th anniversary.
I wish I'd be here 75 years from now to see how you've grown and how many more acres you've impacted throughout the continent.
I am so thrilled that Ducks Unlimited is celebrating their 75th anniversary. Congratulations, Ducks Unlimited.
Been a member of DU for about 50 years.
Best thing about this organization is that the employees and the volunteers are the most dedicated group of people to their purpose that I've ever known.
Happy birthday, Ducks Unlimited, on your 75th birthday.
I've been a Ducks Unlimited member for a long time. I'm on the Wetlands America Trust Board, and I'm also a duck hunter, obviously. And the more we can do for the ducks, the better.
Happy birthday, number 75. You're catching up with me.
Happy 75th birthday, Ducks Unlimited.
I think it's really important that we preserve our wildlife habitat so that my children's children will have the opportunity to enjoy the same sport that my kids have been able to enjoy.
When Ducks Unlimited was founded back in 1937, my dad was a member, and my job was to sell stamps, Ducks Unlimited stamps to the grade school kids, $1 for a page of stamps. So I can say I've been fundraising for Ducks Unlimited for 75 years.
I'm very proud to be associated with Ducks Unlimited, and I can't say enough about the wonderful organization it is. Happy birthday, Ducks Unlimited.
I'm part of something that's bigger than me. I'm part of something that's really important, and I'm part of something that's going to give a gift to my heirs that are yet to be born. And I think that may be as important as anything else.
This is a picture of promise and a recitation of hope. It's up to you to keep it going.